In the neon-drenched heart of Synthera City, where quantum towers cast kaleidoscopic shadows and drones hummed like a chorus of restless spirits, Victor Kane was king. A billionaire tech magnate at 40, his company, Helix Dynamics, dominated the neural augmentation market, its implants granting users enhanced cognition, memory, and even emotions. Victor's face-sharp cheekbones, piercing blue eyes, was a fixture on every hollow billboard, his charisma a currency that bought loyalty and silence. From his Sky Vault office, he controlled Helix's proprietary AI Seraph, which managed everything from implant updates to his personal brand. But beneath his polished exterior, Victor hid a betrayal that had broken the one person who'd ever seen through his facade. Deep in Synthera's undergrid, a warren of black market tech hubs and flickering data dens, Mira Salas worked in a converted cargo container, her rig a tangle of wires and glowing screens. Known as Viper in hacker circles, Mira was a legend, her neural implant a prototype she'd built herself, making her a ghost in the digital realm. 7 years ago, she'd been Victor's lover, his partner in the early days of Helix, when they were two dreamers coding in a cramped apartment. They'd shared everything late-night algorithms, whispered promises, a vision of tech that could elevate humanity. But when Helix caught the eye of corporate sharks, Victor made a choice. He sold Mira's breakthrough code, claiming it as his own, and erased her from the company's history. The betrayal left her penniless, disgraced, and burning for revenge. Mira's plan was a digital guillotine. Seraph was Helix's backbone, a sentient AI that guarded Victor's empire with ruthless precision. But Mira knew its origins. She'd written its first lines, back when she and Victor were a team. Her goal was to hack Seraph, expose Victor's theft of her work, and dismantle Helix from the inside. The romantic in her, buried under layers of scar tissue, wanted him to face her, to see the woman he'd discarded. But the hacker in her wanted his empire in ashes. Her fingers danced over her holo interface, her implant humming as she dove into the digital ether. Seraph's defenses were a labyrinth of quantum encryption and adaptive algorithms, but Myra was a predator in this space. She unleashed a swarm of micro-drones, each a sliver of her code, to probe Seraph's outer firewalls. The AI countered with a surge of junk data, trying to drown her out, but Mira was ready. She deployed a decoy, a simulated breach on Helix's public servers, while her drones slipped through a legacy port she'd built into Seraph's early framework, a relic Victor had never bothered to patch. The breach came at 1:42 a.m., a silent victory that lit up her screens. Her drones mapped Seraph's architecture, revealing Victor's private data, financials, contracts, and a hidden folder labeled M. initials. Inside were encrypted logs, Victor's private musings, confessions of guilt over what he'd done to her. I took her life's work, and I can't sleep for it. Mira's breath caught, her heart twisting. Was this remorse, or just another layer of his performance? She pushed the thought aside, focusing on her goal, Seraph's private keys. The digital skeleton key to Victor's empire. The next morning, Mira shadowed Victor through Synthera's glittering tech district, her black jacket and tinted lenses blending her into the crowd. She'd hacked his schedule, knowing he'd be at his usual haunt, a sleek lounge overlooking the city's quantum spires. Victor sat at a corner table, his tablet glowing with Seraph's interface, his face a mask of control. Myra positioned herself nearby, her implant tapping into the lounge's Wi-Fi to deploy a nano-drone disguised as a speck of dust. It settled on his tablet, planting a keylogger before he could blink. Victor's eyes flicked up, scanning the room, and for a heartbeat, it locked on hers. Mira's pulse spiked had he sensed her. She'd altered her appearance, her auburn hair now cropped and dyed silver, her posture slouched, but Victor had always had an uncanny knack for finding her. He frowned, then looked away, dismissing the stranger. Myra exhaled, her implant streaming. The keylogger's data, passwords, tokens, fragments of his digital life. The MSIS folder lingered in her mind, a crack in her resolve. Was he still the man she'd loved, or just a ghost wearing his face? Back in her den, Myra sifted through the data. The keylogger had given her Seraph's outer keys, but the MS folder revealed more a video of Victor, alone in his office, speaking her name like a prayer. Myra, I built this for us, but I lost you in the process. Her fingers trembled, anger and longing colliding. She shook it off, crafting a virus to seize Seraph's broadcast system. It would expose Victor's theft, his lies, and maybe his regret, to every neural implant in Synthera. That night, she stood in an abandoned warehouse overlooking the city, her implants scanning for surveillance. Victor's sky vault glowed in the distance, a monument to his betrayal. But her drones caught a message from him, sent to an anonymous drop. I know it's you. Meet me at the old lab, 1 a.m. I need to make this right. Myra's heart raced. Was this a trap or a confession? Her decryption tools confirmed its authenticity. She couldn't walk away. The old lab was a relic of their past, a crumbling space where they'd coded their dreams. Myra arrived cloaked in a stealth suit, her implant on high alert. Victor stood alone, his silhouette sharp against the city's neon glow, his face etched with exhaustion. Myra, he said, his voice soft, breaking her cover. He'd known. It was her, just as she'd feared. I felt you in Seraph. No one else could touch it like that. She deactivated her cloak, stepping into the dim light. Why now, Victor? Trying to save your throne? No, he said, his blue eyes raw. Trying to save what's left of me. I stole your work, Myra. I let them erase you. But I never stopped loving you. Her implant buzzed drones closing in, Seraph's security on her trail. She stepped closer, her voice sharp. Prove it. Give me something real. Victor handed her a drive, its surface etched with their old project logo. This is Seraph's. Core override. Use it, and Helix falls. But it takes me down too. Myra took it, their fingers brushing, a spark of their old fire. Her den was compromised. They needed somewhere safe. My place, she said, the words a gamble. As they slipped into Synthera's shadows, the city's pulse chasing them, Myra knew this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming the love they'd lost or destroying it for good. Myra's cargo container safehouse was a fortress of controlled chaos, its walls lined with salvaged quantum drives and flickering holoscreens that cast jagged shadows across the concrete floor. The air was thick with the hum of overclocked servers, the faint burn of solder, and the bitter edge of Myra's third energy drink of the night. She and Victor sat at her rig, the drive he'd given her plugged into her system, its data unfolding like a digital Pandora's box. Seraph's architecture was a labyrinth of elegance and paranoia Helix Dynamics' neural augmentation empire laid bare, its algorithms manipulating user emotions, amplifying biases, and silencing dissent to keep Victor's image untarnished. But the MS folder was a deeper cut. Voice logs, encrypted letters, and raw video diaries where Victor confessed his theft of Myra's code, his betrayal of their shared dream, and the love he'd buried to build his empire. Each file was a shard of their past, sharp enough to draw blood. Myra's implant thrummed, parsing terabytes of data at a speed that made her temples ache, her vision occasionally flickering with static. Victor worked beside her, his fingers steady on a secondary tablet as he fed her override codes backdoors he'd woven into Seraph during its infancy, when they'd coded side by side in a haze of ambition and intimacy. His presence was a constant disturbance, his cedar and steel scent, a ghost of nights spent tangled in each other, debugging code and dreaming of a world remade by their tech. Every brush of his arm against hers, every glance that lingered too, Long was a reminder of what they'd been and what he'd destroyed. Myra's anger was a live wire, but the Emma's files stirred something else. A flicker of the love she'd thought was dead, now clawing its way back to the surface. "Why keep these?" she asked, her voice slicing through the server hum. She gestured at a video on her screen, Victor, alone in his sky vault, his voice breaking as he whispered her name, admitting he'd sold her code to secure Helix's first major deal. "You could have deleted them, buried it all. Why hold on to this guilt?" Victor leaned back, his blue eyes shadowed, his hands pausing over his tablet. "Because forgetting you was impossible," he said, his voice low, raw with a vulnerability she hadn't heard in years. "Every line of Seraph has your fingerprints, Mira. I see you in its code, in its logic. I kept those files because they were the only part of you I could still hold on to." Her implant buzzed, a warning of emotional overload, but she ignored it. "You held on to nothing," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You let your board erase me, Victor. You let them call me a fraud, a nobody, while you took my work and built your throne on it. I had to rebuild from nothing, new name, new life, new everything. And you think a few files make up for that?" He flinched, his jaw tightening, but he didn't look away. "I don't expect forgiveness. I was a coward, Mara. I thought I could control at Helix, the board, the narrative. But they owned me the moment I signed that deal. I've been trapped ever since, pretending to be the man they wanted while hating myself for what I did to you." The words hit like a shockwave, cracking the walls she'd built around her heart. She remembered their early days, Victor's laugh, as they debugged code at 3 a.m., his hand warm against hers, his promises that they'd change the world together. Now, he was a stranger wearing the face of the man she'd loved, and yet his regret felt real, a weight that mirrored her own. She wanted to scream, to shove him out of her life again, but the data on her screens demanded focus. Seraph was the key to dismantling Helix, and her virus was nearly ready, a sleek, vicious piece of code designed to seize its broadcast system and expose Victor's theft, Helix's manipulations, and the truth of their shared past. They dove back into the work, Myra's implant pushing its limits as she mapped Seraph's core. Victor's codes were gold, unlocking layers of encryption she'd have spent weeks cracking alone. But every breakthrough came with a cost. Seraph's AI was learning, its algorithms sniffing for her probes. Her implant pinged a warning. A legacy backdoor she'd found, a relic of their early code, was still active, but rigged with a trap. If she used it, she could access Seraph's neural broadcast hub, but one misstep would alert Helix's security. "We need to go physical," she said, her voice steady despite the risk. "The hub's in their quantum vault, offline except for maintenance windows. If we can get in, we can upload the virus directly." Victor's face darkened, his fingers pausing. The vault's a fortress. Biometric locks, quantum drones, a laser grid tied to Seraph's core. I can get us past the outer defenses, but the inner systems are my own design. They're unforgiving. "Then you'll help me break them," Mira said, her gray eyes locking on his. Her implant ran the odds. 93% chance of detection, 74% chance of capture. She ignored it, her resolve ironclad. "When's the next window?" "Tomorrow night," Victor said, pulling up a schematic of Helix's quantum vault. "During the Nexus Gala, Helix's annual showcase. I'm expected to speak, but I can slip away. It's our only shot." The quantum vault was a monolith in Synthera's industrial sector, its black titanium walls cloaked in hollow camouflage. That made it shimmer like a mirage. Mira and Victor approached under cover of a hacked drone swarm, their stealth suits bending light to render them near invisible. Mira's implant fed her a torrent of data guard rotations, thermal scans, Seraph's patrol patterns shifting in real time. Victor moved beside her, his steps precise, his own tech syncing with hers in a rhythm that felt like their old days when trust was unspoken. But now, every step was a question, every glance a test. Could she trust him, or was this another betrayal, waiting to unfold? At the vault's edge, Victor used a DNA-keyed scanner to disable the outer drones, his hand steady despite the stakes. Mira hacked the quantum lock, her implant wrestling with Seraph's outer defenses, a sentient wall of code that fought back like a living thing. Inside, the air was cold, the hum of processors deafening, a pulse that echoed Cynthia's restless heart. The hub was a glowing quantum array, its cables snaking into the dark, but a laser grid flickered to life, its pattern shifting every 2 seconds. Myra's implant screamed warnings. This was Victor's work, his genius-turned weapon, a mirror of his own guarded soul. "You didn't mention this," she hissed, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the grid's lethal dance. "I didn't know they'd upgraded it." Victor said, his voice tight, his hands already pulling up a holo interface to analyze the grid. "Seraph's evolving beyond my control. It's rewriting itself. No time for doubt." Mira linked her implant to the grid's control node, guiding into its code. It was a beast, Victor's signature in every line elegant, brutal, adaptive. She saw fragments of their old work, her own logic twisted into something monstrous. Her implant burned, her vision blurring as she found a microsecond lag in the grid's randomization. She sent a pulse to freeze it for 1.8 seconds. "Now," she said, and they sprinted through, the lasers grazing their suits, the air crackling with heat dot in the hub chamber. Mira plugged her drive into the array, uploading the virus to seize Seraph's broadcast system. Victor stood guard, his device countering Seraph's counterattacks, his face taut with focus. They were a unit again, their movements fluid, their trust fragile but holding. But an alarm blared. Seraph had detected them. Quantum drones converging on the vault. "Virus is at 85%, Myra said, her voice strained as her implant pushed, its limits static creeping into her vision. Victor grabbed her arm, his touch grounding her. "Stay with me," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We're in this together." The upload hit 100%, and the array flickered, its glow dimming as the virus took root. But drones were flooding the chamber, their scanners locking on. Victor pulled her toward a maintenance tunnel, their hands clasped tight, their stealth suits sparking from overload. They ran, the vault's alarm screaming, Cynthia's neon skyline a blur through cracked windows. Myra's implant pinged the virus was spreading, ready to hijack every helix feed, every neural implant. At the Nexus Gala, they'd done it. But Seraph's wrath was closing in. They stumbled into an alley, their suits smoking, the city's pulse deafening. Victor's face was grim, his breath ragged. "They'll know it was me," he said. "Helix will bury me for this. Then." "We bury them first," Mira said, her voice softer than she meant. She stepped closer, her hand brushing his cheek, feeling the warmth of the man she loved. "You're not alone anymore, Victor. Not if you don't want to be." His eyes searched hers, a storm of guilt and hope. He leaned in, his lips brushing. Hers a kiss that was apology, promise, and desperation all at once. "I never deserved you," he whispered. "But I'm not letting you go again." Drones hummed closer, Seraph's hunters on their trail. Myra pulled him into the shadows, her heart racing. The virus was their weapon, but the fight was far from over. They'd expose Victor's theft, Helix's lies, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to rebuild what they'd lost in the wreckage of his empire. The safe house was a forgotten relay station buried in Cynthia's city's undergrid, its rusted conduits and flickering power cells, a stark contrast to the quantum towers glittering. Above, the air was heavy with the scent of ozone and damp metal. the only light coming from Myra's portable rig and a single cracked hololamp that cast jagged patterns across the walls. Mira and Victor sat hunched over her setup, their faces bathed in the cold glow of screens streaming Seraph's stolen data. Helix Dynamics' empire was laid bare neural implants rigged to manipulate emotions, sway political tides, and bury dissent, all to prop up Victor's untouchable image. The MC folder was the raw nerve. Victor's confessions, his theft of Myra's code, his regret for betraying the woman he'd loved, captured in voice logs and videos that trembled with a vulnerability he'd never shown the world. Each file was a bridge to their past, but also a bomb, ready to detonate his empire and their shared history. Mira's implant burned as it sorted terabytes of data into packets for a global leak, her temples throbbing with the strain of overclocking her. Neural tech. The virus was primed to hijack Seraph's broadcast system during the Nexus Gala, Helix's annual showcase when billions would be linked to their neural feeds, watching Victor unveil the next generation of implants. The plan was to flood every holoscreen, every neural interface, every corner of Synthera with the truth. Victor's theft of her work, Helix's manipulation of minds, and the MC files, exposing the man behind the mogul. But the MC's files were a double-edged sword. Revealing them would free Victor from his lies, but it would also bear his soul to a city that thrived on tearing people apart. Myra's fingers hesitated over her holokeys, her gray eyes flicking. To Victor, he was watching her, his blue gaze raw with trust and fear, his face etched with lines she didn't remember from their early days. "We launch at the gala's peak," she said, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. "When you take the stage, Seraph's broadcast hub will be at maximum load. A virus will hit every implant, every feed, before they can scrub it." Her implant calculated the reach. 91% of Synthera's population, 5.8 billion global users. Her dark web allies hackers, whistleblowers, rogue A's were already primed to amplify the signal, ensuring Helix couldn't contain the fallout. Victor's hands clenched on his tablet, his knuckles white. "This ends me, Mira," he said, his voice low, almost lost in the hum of the servers. "My board, my investors, my fans, they'll crucify me. Helix is all I am." "You're wrong," she said, her voice sharp but tinged with something softer. "You're the man who wrote those logs, who loved me enough to keep my memory alive even when you thought I was gone. You're more than Helix, Victor. You always were." She paused, her implant buzzing with emotional overload, but she pressed on. "This isn't just about you. It's about every mind they've twisted, every voice they've silenced. We can stop them." His eyes met hers, a flicker of the man she'd loved in their cramped apartment, when their dreams were bigger than their fears. "I don't deserve you," he said, his voice breaking. "I stole your work, your future. I let them erase you because I was too weak to fight. Why are you doing this for me?" "I'm not doing it for you," she said, though the words felt like a lie. "I'm doing it for us, for the people we were, for the world we wanted to build, and because I loved you, Victor. Enough to hate you for years, but also enough to want you back." The admission hung heavy, a thread connecting their fractured past to this fragile moment. Victor reached for her hand, his fingers trembling as they laced with hers. It wasn't the fiery passion of their youth, but something deeper, a recognition of shared scars, shared dreams, and the possibility of redemption. Mira squeezed his hand, her heart racing, then turned back to her rig. Her implant pushed through the pain, finalizing the virus's protocols. Victor fed her the last of Seraph's override codes, each one a betrayal of the empire he'd built, a step toward dismantling the machine that had consumed him. Her dark web network was alive with chatter, ready to spread the leak to every neural feed, every hollow billboard, every corner of the digital world. By 4 a.m., the virus was locked, a digital cataclysm waiting to be unleashed. But Seraph was awake. Myra's implant screamed alerts. Seraph say, I had traced her probes, its algorithms scouring Synthera's grid for their signal. Quantum drones swarmed the city, their thermal scans painting the undergrid in red. The safe house was cloaked, its location scrambled by Mira's countermeasures, but Seraph was relentless, its code evolving to hunt them. They're closing in, Victor said, his holomap showing a tightening net of drones around their sector. We can't stay here. We don't run, Mira said, her voice like steel. We launch from here during the gala. If we move now, we lose the window. Her implant ran the odds. 97% chance of detection, 88% chance of capture. She ignored. Her focus absolute. Help me reinforce the signal. Victor nodded, his hands flying over his device to bolster her encryption, his tech syncing with hers in a desperate dance. They rigged MP traps around the safe house, their movements fluid, a mirror of their old coding nights, but charged with the weight of their mission. Mira's virus was at 94%, her implant burning as it pushed the signal through Seraph's defenses. Drones breached the outer perimeter, their lasers slicing through the EMPs with terrifying precision. Victor grabbed her shoulders, his touch, anchoring her as her vision flickered with static. You're burning out, he said, his voice urgent. Link with me. She hesitated, the risk of merging their systems, a vulnerability she'd avoided since their breakup. But there was no time. She sensed her implant with his device, their minds brushing in the digital space, a dizzying intimacy that felt like falling into their past. His code was there, elegant and familiar, woven with hers in a way that made her heart ache. Together, they pushed the virus to 100%, and Seraph's hub flickered, its broadcast system hijacked. Across Synthera, holoscreens erupted with the Truth Helix's neural manipulations, Victor's theft of Mira's code, and the MS files, his confessions playing in raw, human detail. The Nexus Gala dissolved into chaos, attendees gasping as their implants fed them the leak, reporters scrambling, the city's pulse stuttering under the weight of revelation. Drones smashed through the safe house's walls, their scanners locking on. Mira and Victor ran, slipping through a hidden conduit into Synthera's labyrinthine undergrid, a maze of tunnels, pipes, and forgotten tech. The city roared above, protests erupting, hollow billboards looping their leak, Helix's stock crashing. In real time, they stumbled into a derelict data vault, its rusted server silent, their breaths ragged as their stealth suits sparked from overload. Myra's implant was fried, her head pounding, but the broadcast was unstoppable now. Seraph was unraveling, and Helix with it. We did it, Victor said, leaning against a crumbling server rack, his voice hoarse with relief and exhaustion. His face was lit by the faint glow of a dying hoload, his blue eyes searching hers. You broke me open, Myra. You gave me a chance to be more than their puppet. You were never their puppet, she said, stepping closer, her voice soft but firm. You were just lost. And I wasn't going to let you stay that way. Her hand found his, their fingers intertwining, the warmth of his skin a reminder. Of the man she'd loved, the man she still loved, despite everything. He pulled her into a hug, his arms tight around her, not as lovers, but as survivors, bound by a shared fight and a shared redemption. Where do we go now? He asked, his voice muffled against her hair, the city's chaos echoing through the tunnels. Anywhere, Mira said, her heart steady for the first time in years. As long as it's together. She pulled back, meeting his gaze, seeing. The boy who'd coded with her under starlight, the man who'd fallen, but was rising again. We rebuild, Victor, not Helix, not Seraphus. They slipped deeper into the undergrid, Synthera's lights fading behind them. The world above was burning, Helix's collapse a beacon of change, but Mira and Victor were already forging a new path. Their love, scarred but unbroken, was a quiet rebellion against a city of machines. A promise that even in a world of code, the human heart could rewrite its own future. As they vanished into the shadows, hand in hand, Syntheris, pulse beat on, but it was their story now, written in courage and reclaimed truths.